Greetings, coaches, scrum masters, transformation leads, change agents across the North American continent. It is so good to see you and global guests. I am Jesse, and I am super excited to be a part of this event. And so far, I mean, it's been super eye-opening. There's been some really good points and some really good concepts that have been offered up to us, and you guys have been fantastic getting engaged and typing up your thoughts and notes. And we want to talk now about something practical, something tangible, just like we did in the previous session, getting practical and getting tangible in working with teams. That's the theme for the day. And I've got one message, one key thought for you. If you get nothing else, get this. Your transformation is not a failure. It has only just begun. You know, those of us who are on the front lines of trying to move organizations and teams forward, those of us who are trying to help people see what's better and what opportunities out there, it can get exhausting, it can get discouraging, it can get frustrating. And it's easy sometimes to just fall into the trap of looking at the gap between what is and what we know could be. And so I'm here to tell you, I've got several thoughts and tips and techniques and concepts to share with you on this hour about the untapped agility that waits in front of you. It might not happen overnight. It might not happen this year, but it can still happen. And we've got a couple of reasons for that, and I'm going to share them with you. The agenda, very quickly. We're going to start off with an interactive question. We're going to get interactive because, you know, the bar is kind of set now pretty high now that we've learned what virtual facilitation is all about, and that is going to impress upon us how we can collaborate together here in this session. After we open up with the question, we're going to go straight into looking at a story and the pattern that emerges from that story. And we'll look at how there are multiple barriers to team agility. It's not just that you're stuck in your thing, but the good news is you're not alone. You are not alone. If you're frustrated that your team is only at this level, or your team isn't doing this yet. And then we'll take a look at some moves, some rebound moves for a couple of specific areas, whether it's team practices or the team culture. And then I've got some free resources to throw your way, no questions asked. So that's kind of what we have in store for us. So we're going to start first with a Zoom poll. Now, the team worked really hard today, and I'm not kidding. They put in way too many hours to figure out how can we Zoom poll. So we're going to give it a whirl. I'm hitting the button, launch poll. Here's my question. What is holding your team back right now? Pick any team in your mind, any team you work with. And here are the 5 candidate options. Is it they're just generally resistant to change and they're not on board? Is it that they're kind of on board, but they're stuck? They've got 20 years of habits, and it's really taking them a long time to change. Or maybe option 3, they're poor practices. I mean, they're just doing it wrong and it's causing problems. Or maybe option 4, their mindset is only just about doing Agile. They're not being Agile. And because of that, they're just very rigid and they're not growing and evolving. Or maybe their current work structure and policies around them are what's holding them back, or their current structure and policies even within the team. So I've launched this poll. I'm not seeing any percentage numbers go up. Are people, Elena, Brock, you guys seeing it? So go ahead and click on one of these things.
We see it.
Okay, click on one of them. And let's see what happens here.
So Jesse, let me know when you want. It looks like I can end the polling and then it will publish it after that, I think. So
I think we've given people enough time to clicky click.
Okay.
Do the thing.
End the polling and share the results. So you guys should see the results now. Is that right?
Yep, I see it.
All right. I'm not able to see it. So how about you tell me what I'm supposed
I will just tell you the results. So in at a whopping 11% resistance to change, 20% they're stuck, taking too long to change habits, poor practices causing problems at 8%, and mindset is merely doing Agile, not being Agile, 30%.
Ooh.
And our winner is current org structure and policies at 31%.
Yes. So there's a lot about that, what's around the team that's holding the team back, but also maybe some of that org structure and policies is leaking into the team itself. And you're starting to see the team reflect some broader systemic toxicity and other issues. So thank you everybody for participating. That kind of sets the stage of what we want to talk about. So let's talk about those barriers. Let's talk about what's holding your team back from the next level. And you know, there's at least a couple of people, particularly early in the journey, there's at least a couple of people who just don't buy it. They're not on board. Maybe it's that senior engineer who's been around forever and is convinced that he knows everything. Or maybe it's that young new start who wants to prove everything and is not interested in sharing information or details because, you know, she's a young go-getter, wants to like seize opportunities and stuff. So what do we do? How do we get people on board? Let me tell you a story about Gretchen. Gretchen was a PMO leader. She was hired into this job in order to fix things. And that was what her leader told her, executive director at a medical device company. And she went in guns blazing. She had her Agile and she was gonna make it happen. And so she rolled out a bunch of training and then told people projects now will consist of teams that are cross-functional. And she got everybody into the best practices, got them sprinting, and immediately came the blowback, particularly from the middle managers. And they were like, nothing's broken, except their boss's boss has been telling them that something's broken. There was a fundamental denial of reality that was happening. And it turned into a knife fight for years. And so the impact of that was that we had teams that were component teams. We had dev teams and test teams not talking to each other, and there was a database team that everybody was reliant on. And it was just a pain. And what was more painful than the status quo was the arguing and the pushback, and then oh sure, yeah, I get it on board. And then retracting later. No, I've changed my mind. I've decided this is a really bad idea. And so as a change agent, she's like, what do I do? And she decided to do something different than taking the initiative initially. She decided to wait them out. Wait for them to feel the pain of to where they wanted the coaching, to where they wanted some kind of intervention or some kind of support or something. Instead of pushing, she waited for the pull, and it took 3 years. But when it did, they realized, wow, you know, these teams were really not collaborating effectively, and then we need a scaling solution. We need some way for us to remove these dependencies that are slowing us down. And then when that started happening, she was offered an invitation to coach, and she was given much more audience. She was given much more support by the people that she was trying to coach. And what also revealed is that once that happened, she was able then to look back at the long journey over those 2 or 3 years to see just how much incremental progress had been made. And so there was progress being made she couldn't see because of all of the arguing and the bickering. So it was a long haul. And what's interesting is that what the solution was the opposite of what got the initial momentum. So has this happened to you? Have you been trying to help teams move forward and they're just kind of like murmuring, you know, this Agile stuff is just a bunch of nonsense. It'll go away. Yeah. Meanwhile, everybody else is on board. Meanwhile, you've got like money being spent, people being hired. It's happening, but there's, you know what, this will blow over 2 months from now. And they are still saying it, even though we're 2 years into a transformation. And And so it turns out that this barrier of people not being on board is common. It's normal. And we'll get into it in a minute as to why that is. But usually we don't even notice it until we get started by leveraging our role. I am a PMO manager. I'm a PMO leader. I run the PMO. All projects run the way I say. So I'm gonna, and you take some initiative. You push it forward. Or I am the development director, and so I'm going to leverage my my positional authority, and we're going to get this started. I am the Agile coach. People come to me for guidance on how we're supposed to do this Agile thing, so I'm going to just explain it to everybody. And if I just explain it to everybody, they'll totally be on board, right? Until they're not. And what you're running into by leveraging your role as a coach, as a scrum master, as a line manager, a supervisor, you're running into as far as you can go with just your role-based authority. And the solution then is to stop doing that and do something different. And in Gretchen's case, her solution was to stop selling Agile, but start aligning to the needs and desires of the people there. Stop bringing your hopes and desires for what agility can do to a team, and start listening to their hopes and desires for some solution to whatever their pains have always been. And so she started waiting. She waited for them to feel pain that she could then address and make happen. So what does that look like? Well, when you start getting that pushback, what's really happening is something on a neurological level. On a neurological level, when the status quo is disrupted, two questions immediately come to every team member's mind. Why? Why is this happening to me? As a change agent, Agile coach, Scrum Master, or transformation lead, you are the embodiment of chaos. You are the embodiment of disruption. And so there is legitimate question. Why is this happening to me? Everything was fine until we started changing the status quo. And they need to know why. And your why that you have may not resonate. Here's another question. It's also deeply neurological, which is, what about me? So we're tapping into the id right now. What value do I have? Am I safe? Am I going to lose my job? Am I no longer valued? All of these things start swirling up as soon as you start coming in with as soon as we start coming in with our Agile. And it's important to remember that when people are asking these questions, they're not being adversarial. There's deep neurological need going on around grief. I am grieving my status quo. And we need to exhibit empathy for people who just don't understand. I don't understand. And it takes the shape, the research shows that it takes the shape of trauma. Much the same way many of us had a very stable livelihood 6 months ago, and then along comes a global pandemic, global recession, societal strife, and now the thing that had me stable, I'm now unstable. Well, your Agile transformation is just a small but similar example of that kind of disruptive nature of things. Oh, and by the way, when they're asking, what's my role, what's my role, what's my role, they're not trying to be selfish. There's fear. And as coaches, it's our job to not just tolerate those questions, but expect them and empathize with them. Well, how do we answer those questions? Well, on the why question, the most credible answer, according to the research, comes from senior leadership. The senior leadership drives context, the organizational context around all teams. And so I hope that you have been given some talking points that you can share with your teams about why this Agile transformation needs to happen. If we ask the entire industry why they're doing it, these are the four most common answers. 7 out of 10 of everybody asked in the entire Agile community, according to the research from State of Agile, say that we got to get faster. And maybe there's a story around losing funding because of delays. Some people, for them, it's about flexibility, productivity, customer alignment, and satisfaction. But ask your leadership, why are we doing this? I need talking points to give to my team so they can get on board. They're not on board because they don't know why. Until they know why, I don't have any credibility as a coach or as a scrum master or as a pod manager or whatever your role might be. Another way to answer the why question is to do a survey. This is a graphic of the competing values framework where you ask all 100 team members on all the teams, what is your current cultural balance? And here in this company, this blue company, which is an R&D company, they are imbalanced in favor of going fast. They're very competitive. They got an Amazon vibe going on there. You know, Amazon's culture is famous for saying, yes, please disagree, offer your opinion, and then commit to what the leadership said. Disagree and commit. And Amazon's very much about going fast and doing things that have been done, but just doing them faster and cheaper. Not so much about getting along, not so much about being truly innovative. And then if you were to ask at this R&D company, what culture do you want? Yeah, look at that, there's a dotted line. And so we see now a misalignment between our current state and our desired state. And that can be the justification, the motivation for a transformation. We can say, listen, we are out of balance. We are hemorrhaging talent. So we have got to find a way to have more collaborative environment. We've got to balance our competitive nature with a more collaborative dynamic. Be less like Amazon, be more like Spotify, for example. And this is a way that you can reveal the system to itself. And as the saying goes with systems thinking, and how can we, as coaches, provide an answer? Why are we even doing this? Well, it might be that we need to tell a little bit of truth about where we're at. And then with respect to what about me? What's in it for me? Translation, am I safe? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be undervalued, demeaned, irrelevant? Well, there are some not so helpful answers in the red on the left and some more helpful answers on the right. You know, you're in the PMO. PMO has no value. I'm an Agile transformation lead. You're welcome. You're a project manager, but your role has no value. I'm Scrum Master. You're welcome. Not helpful. More helpful might be, yes, your role is going to change. And if we believe in empowerment and inclusion, you're going to have a say in what your new role is going to look like. And maybe you might decide to shift your focus. In Gretchen's story, several of the managers, several of those line managers who were pushing back on Agile eventually discovered, you know what? I feel more comfortable going back to an individual contributor role. And they went back inside teams. Counterintuitive, you wouldn't have expected it, but they were pushing back less about losing their status and more about losing their job. And so once we got past that, we were able to help give them a story. What's in it for me? Because at the end of the day, nobody cares about your Agile. Nobody cares until they know you care about them. Once you've built rapport, once you've built credibility, human credibility, not intellectual credibility, but once you've built relational credibility, now suddenly I might listen to what you have to say because I know you're not out for my job. And I know that you're not out to undermine my psychological and financial safety. Oh, by the way, that quote's not mine. This is me taking the Teddy Roosevelt quote and just you know, a little credit where credit's due. It's not my quote. It's just kind of fun. So this is the pattern, ladies and gentlemen. The pattern is the boost got us started. Leverage your role. You have some positional authority, whether it's manager, director, coach, supervisor, scrum master, project manager, whatever it is. You have some influence with these teams. Leverage your role, get them started. But then don't be surprised when there's some pushback because you are selling Agile instead of aligning to their needs. We get really excited about our favorite methodology, really excited about our favorite technique and our favorite practice. And we forgot to ask people, you know, what would success look like for you? So that's the pattern for that barrier. But it turns out this pattern happens over and over and over again when it comes to getting teams to moving towards agility. There are several barriers, and those barriers, you only come to them after you get started. It's only when you get started where you discover what's in your way in any journey. And then the solution then is to find the rebound move that leans against the vibe, the philosophy of that initial boost, where you can find a different space and a different place to make further momentum. We're going to talk about it a little bit more because it turns out there are many barriers out there. There's a lot of barriers. In fact, the entire industry has known for years what holds agility back. We ask this question every year. We've asked it in many ways in many places, and the same answers keep coming back. In fact, in the research for the book that comes with this talk, I went ahead and did a meta study, and I took a look at all of these over the last few years. A lot of these different studies, the State of Agile report, the State of Scrum, the one lean startup survey that we've seen that was featured in Harvard Business Review, Forrester, and the project management institute. What's holding agility back? And the answers are very common. Over here on the left, what you heard just in this poll, just in the poll that we just did, culture and structure are holding us back. Not enough resources, and by resources that means not enough people, not enough hardware, not enough tooling, not enough training, not enough leadership support. Some middle manager said, we're going to go out. Some like junior executive, maybe like a senior director or junior VP said, we're going to go agile. But it turns out the C-level never got the memo. And now there's big like political infighting going on. Well, it would be good if we had some leadership alignment around that. And those are some patterns. And several of these keep popping up. And there are some common examples of those patterns that we're going to talk about today. There's 7 of them that are highlighted in the Untapped Agility story, in the Untapped Agility book. And we're going to talk about 3 of them. We just did the first one. No buy-in. Hey, no buy-in. We were to stop selling, start asking, and then start aligning to what their needs are. And maybe you'll start getting a little bit more buy-in. The next barrier we want to talk about is practices. They're doing it wrong. Oh my God, it's just like fingernails on a chalkboard with these user stories. It's like it's indigestion whenever I hear them talking about how they're going to, plan 14 sprints in advance. Oh my gosh, it's just driving me. It's killing me with their estimates. And then they're slipping stories left and right. Let's do a chat poll right now in the chat window. I'm going to invite you to type up what are some of what's the one practice that one of your teams is doing that drives you the most crazy? What broken agile technique or broken agile method are they doing? Maybe it's user stories for things that don't make sense. Maybe it's technical user stories. That's a favorite of some. Maybe it's man-days, story points, confusion. Maybe it's the Scrum Master really just being a project manager. While you're typing that into the chat window, I want to share you a story about one practice in particular that went really bad. Mike was the transformation lead, Agile transformation lead at a large publisher, and he took over his predecessor. His predecessor recently left in a fit because he was trying to drive a big bang rollout of the scaled Agile framework. And it could have been large scale Scrum, it could have been Scrum at scale, but he had this methodology and he was going to roll it out to everybody and and he lasted about 2 years before he finally gave up in frustration. Well, he showed up and he noticed there were some good things that were done. He noticed they had teams, cross-functional teams. He noticed that they had aligned to 2-week sprints. He noticed that there was a flattened organization. There was much less bureaucracy than there was before. Pretty cool. But the one thing that he started noticing that was a bit of a side effect of all that Agile momentum was the job titles were getting in the way. Typically, it was the Scrum Masters. Scrum Masters were going around interpreting their role as the process police, saying this daily stand-up is only permitted to be 15 minutes. It is now the 16th minute, and all of you must leave. And you are not permitted to talk to the team. you must your manager. Okay, your role as an value, and all of the decisions are given the team, and so just you go away. And the backlog is improperly formatted, and it was just okay. Meanwhile, the product owners were saying, I am the product owner. I own all things about the product. I own all the estimates, all the decisions. I own all of the designs. I own. And these job titles were starting to get to be a bit of a problem. But that's what the framework said. That's what the methodology said. That's what the Scrum Guide said. Although there was some rampant misunderstanding, there was also some very strict following it to the letter going on at the same time. So he had an idea. What if I just removed everybody's title? Keep the people, remove the title. So he removed the title Scrum Master, and he removed the title Product Owner, and thereby removed the baggage that people brought with them around those titles, and immediately created a vacuum. And he offered everybody an option. Would you like to go to a product manager? Would you like to go to a prod team facilitator? Would you like to go to, and he offered a variety of these things, and people lost their minds. And they had to start to ask questions. What value do I provide? What about me? Well, do I still have a job? Am I safe? And once we started getting dialogue going, the teams themselves felt a little bit free. Now, as a team member, I can actually talk to a user and a stakeholder and a customer without going through a product owner. Oh, more collaboration. You mean we can start experimenting with different ways to format our artifacts and different ways to do it? Oh, a little bit more innovative, a little bit more creative. And all he did was take the baseline of what was done and shift it around a little bit. So let's take a look at what you guys typed up. So if I hop over in the chat window and zoom, we've got, let me just kind of see, Spirit of Scrum and Scrum titles, changing all the titles to minions, minion 1, minion 2. Here's one, QA works across multiple Scrum teams. And then, people not willing to be cross-functional, too much dogma. Oh, and the POs used to traditional methods and want some of this. The Scrum Master as administrator. That's right, the chief of the paperwork. So it looks these are really good examples of practices that just drive us crazy. And it turns out this is a pattern. It happens to all of us all the time. It happens to every single team who's ever tried this stuff for the first time. They're doing it wrong. And the only reason we know they're doing it wrong is because we started with those best practices. And I know the term best practices is controversial, but let's say install Agile practices, and that gave you a boost. It gave people something tangible to hold on to. It gave them some baseline of instructions to start. And by doing that, they move forward a little bit, right smack into not doing it right. And so just, and they've been doing it wrong now for 2 years. They're never going to get it. They're always going to be doing it. So maybe it's time to throw the textbook away. That's right. Throw the Scrum Guide away. Throw that Kanban manual away. Close that browser window on Scaled Agile and put your large-scale Scrum in the drawer. It might be time to move beyond those practices. And then let me tell you why. Because the best practices out there often don't align with reality around growth and reality around context. Growth, crawl, walk, run, context, pain, purpose, and pivot. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So growth, the official best practice manual for driving a Honda comes with the Honda. It's right there. This is the manual. The best practices in order to drive in the rain, you use the wiper and you use it this way. And but my 15-year-old just got his permit to begin learning how to drive. And I guarantee you, he's not at all interested in that. He's thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm just now learning how to drive. I don't know how to do this. I'm going to do it wrong because I'm fighting for my survival. Kind of like when my job title just changed. Kind of like when my entire value as a professional is being questioned. I suddenly don't care about the user manual. I suddenly care more about maybe solving one problem at a time. Growth. Here's another way to look at it. Leaders, and that's us guys. We're leaders. We're influencers as coaches. Our vision for agility is the hockey stick, just like any executive. Start work, excellent results. Start spend money, make money. Start agile, be awesome. And the reality is there is no hockey stick for agility. We know that the trajectory follows a J curve, and the J curve is a pattern in all of human experience. In finance, you got to spend money before you make money. In psychology, when I start kind of trying to go through a traumatic event, like life sucks, and then eventually I synthesize that event and move on. Nation building. As we move forward with more democracy, the stability goes down because we don't have a dictator anymore. And then over time, it goes back up. Likewise with change. So change, we're going to start with the status quo, and then things are going to get worse before they get better. Let me just repeat that one more time. The team is going to get worse before it gets better because there's this valley of confusion, this valley of indecision, this valley of uncertainty. And it's not going to be a bulletproof skyrocket ride. New practices must be done poorly before they are done well. And I think we need to be reminded of that sometimes as people who are advocating for better ways of working. They're going to stumble. They're going to stumble the first time you rode a bike, the first time you spoke as a child languages, the first time you started writing. These are new skills, and those new skills are going to look clumsy and they're going to look bad before they get better. Oh, by the way, problem number two with reality, context is king. Context is king. So here, I like this one. This caterpillar is so excited to become a butterfly. This is all about being a butterfly. I can't wait to be a butterfly. I'm a caterpillar. I'll be a butterfly. Oh, look at that big caterpillar over there behind the bars. Well, I can't wait to see what kind of butterfly he turns into, even though it's a completely different animal, completely different context. And many times as coaches, we bring our past, we bring our perspective, our experience into our teams and expect a lift and shift right into them and just don't understand why it's not working. Why can't you get into production in 2 weeks? Why can't you get feedback from your stakeholders? It had worked for me just fine in the last 5 teams I was on. And that's true, it may have, but context is king. And there's 3 steps for us to help kind of unpack that. Because one of the things that we never learn is how to tailor agile practices. That Scrum guide does not come with a tailoring section. Large scale Scrum does not come with a tailoring section. SAFe does not come with a tailoring section other than choose your configuration. And that's it. So what do? And so we put together the 3P tailoring rubric. There, I'll call it a rubric. Ask first, for any practice your team is struggling with, what's the pain they're running into? Get them to say it out loud. Number 2, what was the purpose of this practice in the first place? Why are you upsetting my apple cart? Why? And then 3rd, what's a way we can pivot this practice so that we can get at least some of the value from it in a way that recognizes the pain? Let's give an example. Let's say you're in a Zoom meeting. We just learned a lot about how to be Zooms. And what we're realizing is that the video webcams is not working for us. We just can't do it because the time zones, I'm literally in my pajamas trying to make this meeting. Not only that, but the face-to-face and the verbal communication and all of that is very challenging for those of us who are non-native English speakers. I prefer something other than video. What's the purpose? Rather than getting all upset, you're not collaborative because you don't turn on your webcam. Well, the purpose was to get some nonverbal into the conversation, into our interactions, to create more of a connection with each other, to capture more of that communication dynamic, and also to build some team rapport. Well, the pivot might be, let's do asynchronous communication through multiple chat channels, not just Slack, but maybe WhatsApp. That's right, you can use WhatsApp at the office. Or there's some kind of a wiki or a blog that we can use, like Miro we used in the last hour. And that'll enable me as a non-native English speaker to take the content in there and run it through Google Translate. Oh, that's what they were talking about. I was working with a team in Beijing, and the number one frustration they had was translating user stories. And once we found a way for them to enable them to leverage Google Translate, suddenly now it's felt less abrasive. So with that practice, this is a challenge to you guys. With that practice that you typed in that chat window, maybe you can start asking these questions. Why is it so hard for them? What are they running into? And don't make assumptions. Sit down and ask. And then explain the purpose of it and brainstorm what some ways we might pivot that practice. Third barrier that we want to talk about, snapping back to old habits. You make this great momentum. You're moving along and it's going great until a couple months later, you realize they've reverted to their old ways of working, and it's like I'm in a time warp where I'm back to when we just started. What is going on here? For some reason, the change did not stick. So we're going to do a new kind of poll. This is going to be super crazy experiment. In about a couple of seconds, we're going to play a game called Would You Rather? And when I ask you, would you rather, I'm going to count to 3. You're going to unmute, and then you're going to shout out which option you would rather. Not now, not yet, but let me build it up for you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have 300 people shouting out loud at the same time. This could go disastrously wrong. It could be hugely hilarious. So, would you rather, after months of training and coaching, putting in days, nights, weekends, would you rather, which of the following 2 scenarios would you rather? Would you rather have excellent sprints, frequent deployments, mature artifacts, but people are still following orders, they're hoarding information, they haven't changed their culture much at all? Bad culture. Would you rather bad culture, or would you rather, after months of training, to have high commitment, full engagement, super good teamwork in a waterfall life cycle with fixed price engagements where we've got really good culture but bad structure? So here's what we're going to do. Your unmute has been enabled. We're going to unmute in the count of 3, and then everybody's going to shout, would you rather, shout bad culture or bad structure in 1, 2, 3.
Bad structure.
Bad structure.
Oh man, okay. You guys were fantastic. That was not a complete disaster. It was a perfect example of reality, which is we don't agree. Did you hear it? I heard it.
I did.
Yeah, I heard it too. I heard a lot of bad structure. I heard a lot of bad culture. And what this turns out to, ladies and gentlemen, we just revealed on this call a pervasive dichotomy in our community. And that pervasive dichotomy is Agile means first we change mindset and culture. Then we deal with the mechanics later. No. Agile means first we do methods and practices and structures. And then they'll then they'll believe it, and then they'll change their mind, but it won't stick. If it doesn't stick, then what's the point of doing all those practices? Well, how do they even know what they believe until they start doing it? Well, you're just wrong. No, you're wrong. And I see this played out at every single Agile conference over and over and over again. And it's wrong. It is a false choice. Because this is what happens to pretty much all of us. Some of us come into a team and we're really passionate about one side of this conversation, and we forget to address sufficiently the other side of the conversation. And wouldn't you know, it doesn't stick. So here's the problem. They're reverting back to old habits. This Agile thing we've been doing a long time. We followed this philosophy and it's just not sticking. They're reverting back to old habits because we went structure first. We rolled out a methodology. We rolled out people, process, and tools, and we got scaled up. And we got committees going. We got all the things. All the things are there, but all the intangibles were forgotten. Or flip the other way, where some other executive said, went to a conference and said, you know, we need to be Agile, not just do Agile. He said, oh my gosh, that's not, yes, we got to do that. So now I'm going to hold a whole bunch of town hall meetings, talk about values, talk about mindset, and just say, yeah, I have an Agile mindset. You should have an Agile mindset too. Yeah, we agree, high five. And then we do trust fall. Oh, and then 2 weeks later, nothing's changed. Because we didn't do anything. It didn't stick. It was very inspiring. There were tears. I was there. But it didn't stick. So what do we do? Both. You got to do both. Your philosophy needs to be more inclusive, holistic. Our philosophy needs to acknowledge that there's truth on both sides of this debate. And when we tap into that mutual truth, attacking culture and structure together, we can start making some progress. A couple of tips. Tip number one is that we want to articulate the aspiration. This is putting words to the invisible, making the intangible tangible. In the past, we would usually plan everything before we do anything. Going forward, we aspire to do this. In the past, we would define universal roles, responsibilities with fancy charts. Today, we're going to have more open guidelines about role definitions. We have some parameters, but you guys are going to have to figure it out in your teams. This comes from a teaming agreement template that I worked with a large consulting company, where they needed a way to remind our teams over and over and over again about what we're trying to do. This was a cultural charter. This was a way for us to describe the shift and to explain why the roles and responsibilities are going to be structurally different and why the planning is going to be structurally different. And it was really helpful for them. Here's number two. Now articulate some experiments. You don't have to have everything figured out, but you do need to make progress in parallel on culture and structure. So this is called the Agile Leadership Canvas. Also came with the book, and a completely free download template. Anybody can use it. What if we took the Agile Manifesto and we turned it into a two-sided coin? Structure, culture, methods, mindset. And we put it in front of a team or on a Miro board, and we just have them fill it out. Hey guys, what would you like to try to achieve more of both sides of the coin here? And one person says, you know, we should do the unicorn trophy and give the craziest, give a prize to the craziest idea that worked. Unicorn trophy. I've seen this happen. One team, it was movie tickets. And then somebody else says, yeah, but that forgets the other side. We should about something tangible. Like what, you know, as we keep deploying defects, what if we had a new rule where we did peer reviews? And then somebody else runs, well, don't forget the other side of the coin. We also need to change some of our culture about being more collaborative. What would a behavior look like to be more collaborative? Well, informally observing other people's meetings might give us an appreciation for their priorities, might give us an appreciation for why they're asking for things that we as a team feel don't make any sense. I'm now being more collaborative in my behavior informally, rather than relying on a structure. Well, we gotta have a structure in place around that. Okay. New policy with the customer stakeholder thing. We're gonna archive old backlog items. Okay. And so this might be a good way to start some dialogue to make sure that we're not just focusing on mechanics without the mindset, and we're not just focusing on a culture without some kind of a tangible operational element around it. And yeah, just go to the Untapped Agility website. You can download that. Here's the point. Structure by itself means nothing without context. And culture by itself means nothing unless it's operationalized. I was talking to one executive at a government financial agency, and he was very frustrated because it was me and it was his SAFE coach in the room, skilled Agile release trained engineer. And he was so frustrated because in the conversation that popped up, we asked about the company's values. He said, well, yeah, I defined the values. We created a PDF, we printed it and put it up on the walls. There shouldn't be any, you can list them, right, Julie? Not her name. She's like, honestly, boss, I don't think I can. And I can't understand this. I emailed the PDF to everybody. Why don't they know our values? Why aren't they living them out? I asked him, well, it's good that you've defined these aspirations, but how do you intend to operationalize them? Oh, I forgot to give my teams something they can hold. What does creativity look like? What is collaboration? What does it look like? Give me something. Don't just give me platitudes. And we do this one step at a time and evolving, iterating along the way. So those were the 3 common barriers I wanted to address with you guys today. And these 3 barriers, if you recall, were addressed by 3 specific rebound moves. And these rebound moves are the 3 that we covered are only 3 of 7 that are covered in the book. If you're interested, just go to the website for those free templates. There's a bunch of free digital freebies. Did I mention the free? That you can download and just play with, experiment with. I would love your feedback, would love your input on this stuff. I'm a bit passionate, as you can tell, about it. And with that, I think we got a little bit of time for some questions.
We can either actually allow people to unmute themselves, since everybody can unmute themselves, ask questions live, or you can put it in a chat.
Or we can have somebody chat, I'd like to be unmuted.
That works as well.
I appreciate the positive words, people. Thank you.
There's a question from Todd. How can professional coaching help these organizations in transformations?
So one of the key dilemmas or tensions in Agile coaching is the collision of the professional coaching mindset of no agenda along with the agenda of agility. So we are hired expressly and explicitly to drive the agenda of higher organizational outcomes. The way that we can reconcile professional coaching into that is by saying, well, we don't assert what those outcomes should be. We leave the space open for you, the leadership, or even the team to describe what does success mean for you. Does more quality, more collaboration, more productivity, more alignment, more visibility, all those things that we saw in the State of Agile survey. Which one matters to you? So that's how you can reconcile the professional coaching principle of no agenda with the very real agenda of driving agility.
And Jesse, what is the best way? Yeah, what is the best way to communicate this same message to leadership?
We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I tend to start any kind of coaching role, whether it's a hire, if I'm hired into a job, I ask, what does success mean for you? Why are you hiring me? Fast forward 2 years from now and you're up for a promotion because this was so successful. Tell me what would have happened. And many times leaders will often, they're so burdened and so overcommitted, busy with a lot of things, they haven't had the opportunity to give that real thought. And that can be the first value you offer as an Agile coach, is to help leadership, even team leadership, not just organizational leadership, but to define and articulate what does success truly mean. And once you have that, then you can start filling in some practices that match those outcomes rather than you coming in with your hammer in search of a nail.
And Jesse, we'll do one last question. How many transformations have you seen where there were major pivots?
All of them? The key word, though, is major. How do you define major? So remember the story we told about Mike at the publisher? They started with scaled Agile, and then the major pivot was that guy gave up and left, and then he came in and he started massaging their own proprietary. I've seen a lot. There was one, we're going to go Spotify model. Lasted about 2 years before they gave up and went to their own proprietary approach. Eventually, and this is what the literature says, eventually every transformation needs to develop its own proprietary reality, its own internal context. So a few years down into your journey, I'm hoping you figured out what works best for you as a team, as a program, as a product, and not still on the textbook. I'm hoping some point you throw that textbook away.
Yep. Let's do one more question. I think we have time for one more. In a situation when leaders have hidden agendas, one, what's to become more agile, others don't care, what might be a possible approach to deal with this?
Well, that is going to be deeply contextual because it might be perceived as a power play. I saw this happen at a different government financial institution where the Agile Center of Excellence was headed by one senior executive. And then the senior executive who held the PMO was like, what are you doing driving this Agile thing? I'm in charge of the thing. Whatever. You don't know Agile. You don't get it. You're PMO. And so I was brought in to train the PMO what Agile is so that they could then immediately go tell them they're wrong. So it wasn't so much of a disingenuous hidden agenda as much as it was that there were well-intentioned leaders who had different visions of what the future reality should look like. And that sounds like a leadership team misalignment. So maybe we need a team coach to get that leadership team in a room and start talking about what are our agreements and disagreements.